Decades-long friendship is torched, all because of a practical joke. Was it worth it? It could have been, except for one little slip-up. My husband has two friends from university. They're inseparable. They do everything together. And I was the first one to marry into the group, so I got to do all the things with the guys. You know, we were the happy foursome. And then our house sort of became the house that they would bring their dating partners over to sort of, for us to give approval for, you know. We figured we were all so close that they should know early on that this was a package deal. And then Jim brought Beverly to our house and into our little group. And she was Old South from Montgomery, Alabama. Or if you heard her say it in her Southern accent, she was from Montgomery, Alabama. She did not need an Emily Post book because she knew all the rules by heart. And she did not appreciate my small town little ways at all. And Jim and Beverly's wedding was like Southern magic. It had engraved silver and monogrammed china. All the magnolias were in bloom. It was gorgeous. And then they surprised us about a year later. They were going to have the first baby to bring it into our little group. And we were all excited. Now, Jim is a third, okay? So naturally, this baby, since it was going to be a son, was going to have a Roman numeral that would come after its name, okay? So before we go on, let me give you a little Southern primer about how we name children in the South. There's a lot of rules, and we're expected to follow those rules. And so if you are a gentleman and you are a third or a fourth, then your baby is getting that Roman numeral, okay? And these rules even work for girls. I am a Julia. My mother is a Julia. My grandmother is a Julia. My great-grandmother is a Julia. When I was a little child, I asked, why do we all have to have the same name, you know? And they said, well, it's because of the monogram, because everything is monogrammed. In the South, everything is monogrammed. Your socks are monogrammed. Your shirt is monogrammed. Your underwear is monogrammed. I thought the brand that my father wore in boxer shorts was WEC. I thought you went to the store and that's what it was. It wasn't Hanes or whatever. It was, but no, they're all monogrammed. And so the monogram is very important in Southern life. Matter of fact, the monogram is so important that when you decide on what your name is, usually a little grandma or an aunt begins sewing that newly minted monogram onto those little onesies or little baby clothes and stuff. Matter of fact, a friend of mine did not get a blessing for her wedding from her mother because her daughter, Amanda Smith, wanted to marry a man whose last name was Sharp, and the mother refused to believe that her daughter's monogram would be ASS. I, however, did not really follow these rules of naming very well. So when I had my children, I totally shelved all the rules that were told to me, and I named my kids after people or places that were important to me. And it really irritated my family. It also irritated the more traditional wives that were in our group. They would say things like, oh, Julia, you named your children random things, you know, like I had picked a name out of the hat or something, you know. And it always bugged me just a little bit. So Beverly had had this baby. About 10 years later, they're having a second baby. And we all get together because, you know, it's that last weekend before the baby takes over their lives. And she's lamenting, like, what is she going to name this baby, the new baby? And I decide I had watched enough or listened to enough Will Shortz with the Puzzler that I could sort of have a little wordplay game going on with this naming thing, and it could be fun. And so they have a strong last name of Pitt. And so in the monogram world, being able to use the letter Q is like the Holy Grail, okay? It is it's like in Scrabble. You get high marks for using it, you know? And so I throw out the name Quentin for a middle name. And Beverly's like, ooh, I could use a Q. I like it. She got a little quiet. And so I said, and you know what else? How about Robert for the first name? And she liked it. And so then I went about selling the name. Robert Quentin Pitt. What a great name. RQP. Now that's a monogram. And then I said, you know, Rob Pitt. Now that's a true sports name. Coming in for quarterback, it's Rob Pitt. So I'm really laying it on thick now. And she begins to really like this name. She likes the name so much that she calls her mother and she says, hey, we've decided on a name. And the mother loves the name and loves the monogram, so much so she calls the local jeweler and she has RQP put onto the engraved onto a silver rattle. Then she calls her grandmother and says, start sewing. RQP, that's what it's going to be. So the grandmother starts sewing the little baby clothes. Now, I didn't tell her the reason why I would like the name so much is because all I could think about is that I would get to call this little guy Bobby. Bobby Q. Pitt. Or, as said in Southern drawl that Beverly would have, Baba Q. Pitt. And so I realize this has gone too far, so I go to the member of the group that sort of has my sense of humor, and I tell him what I've done, and he's like, you can never, ever say what you've done. Absolutely. You just forget about it. And I sort of begin to panic because I know I'm probably going to lose it a little bit, and I'll probably give this kid a stuffed pink pig or something, and it would all be out. So bourbon has a way of making secrets come to light. And we were sitting in that hospital delivery room, waiting room, and we cracked open a new bottle because the baby had been born. And I got the giggles about little Bobby Q. Pitt. And Beverly overheard. Oh my gosh, her face looks like it had melted. She went from like screaming a million words to like saying nothing. And then she looked at me, and I knew she was looking for something to dig her claws into me on it and just blow up. And I said something so foolish. I said, you know, Beverly, I'm so sorry. I know I've crossed the line. And I know everything that you hold dear, I have like totally just messed on. I'm so sorry. But, you know, please forgive me. Please forgive me. And she said, what? I mean, she just could not believe that I was asking for forgiveness after she had named her child Barbeque Pit. And I said, I know this doesn't really mean anything to you because I'm in my 40s and I've already had my children, but I would have let you name one of my kids if I had other kids. But you know what? Tim and I are thinking about getting a dog. You could name that. And oh, the insult she felt by me comparing naming her child to naming a dog. We were friends for years after that, but we never really felt like friends, you know, like sort of like you were like in the same galaxy, but our planets didn't have the same pull anymore, you know. And I would overcompensate by giving her children 2 expensive birthday gifts, hoping that, you know how it goes, you know. So it was Beverly that I thought of first thing when I sat in that doctor's office, sitting there thinking that I was starting to go through menopause, or maybe I had the flu, who knows. Who knew it would take an unplanned geriatric pregnancy to bring our friendship back into balance? Yep, months and months Beverly had of calling me with all her potential names she had for our soon-to-be son that was going to arrive, and our sweet son that is affectionately known in the South as Huckleberry.